Watch out for when you're buying a used Tesla. What's the best way to navigate it? What are some things to look out for on the Carfax?
And we've been seeing a lot of failure rates in batteries coming out of those 3 states too. Even if damage on a Tesla is a little bit more than minor, and it would never even get fixed.
Could you take a paint meter and go through every single panel?
How many miles you'll get at 100% state of charge.
Is there any way to tell like if a Tesla has been supercharged like 90% of the time?
But you can go into the menu and see the last charge. My pro tip of the week is I'm going to provide some insider knowledge on the service department.
Welcome to episode 6 of The Breakdown, your no-fluff guide where we talk about electric vehicles, Teslas, both new, used, and also the repair side as well. My name is Dennis.
And I'm Chip.
And today we're going to talk about watch out for when you're buying a used Tesla from me, who we bought plenty of new Teslas, and Chip, who buys plenty of used Teslas as well. And so before we get into that, we did want to give a special shout out to Amber, the partner of our podcast, but more on that later. And so let's get into it. So today we're just going to talk about the steps from buying a used Tesla, like when you're sitting at home shopping first, like what's the best way to navigate it? Because yes, there's people that just walk into a dealership, but we want to give you some knowledge before you go there so that you're more adequately equipped before getting in there. So Chip, what would you say is like step number one? I guess step number one is figuring out, do you buy like which electric vehicle, what Tesla vehicle? But after
Sure.
you've done that, what's the best way to find some good deals?
Yeah, so you narrow down to what you want. So let's just, for example, pick a Tesla Model 3, because that's what we talk about so much. So you want a Model 3, you want to have something under $25,000. So that's where you start. Now, where do you go? Well, you're going to go online. That's the very first spot you should be in. You're going to start with one of the major car searches, which is going to be Car Gurus, Auto Trader, Carfax, or Edmunds. So those are going to be for all the inventory that's out there. And many dealers are going to be listing on all of those websites. So me personally, we list all of our inventory on all 4 of those sites. So you can see the same inventory on the same sites, but each one of those sites is going to provide valuable data on that vehicle that are unique from some of the other sites. Car Gurus, for example, is going to give you an auto check report, and they're going to give you a market analysis as far as how is the pricing related to the rest of the market. If you go to Carfax.com and look at the vehicle on there, you're going to get a free Carfax report on there for the vehicle, and you're also going to get their market analysis of the pricing and day supply and all of those type of things. So I think a good resource at the very beginning is to find the cars on a reputable site and use the tools that they have available, like the Carfax reports and the auto check reports, because those are going to give you the title status, if the car's been in an accident, how many owners. So there's a lot of valuable information that can help you determine if that's even a car worth going and looking at. I think for me, when I'm shopping for cars, we use different sites, but before I even click into it to see if it's the right color, the right options, I'm checking the history of the car to see if it even meets those qualifications.
So I guess, do you have any preference on like Cars.com, Auto Trader, Car Gurus? I mean,
I use all of them. I think
Oh.
they're all good. Yeah, I think they all offer some unique insight into the vehicles listed, and I will look up the same car on all 3 or 4 sites just to see what they're saying about it. And not every dealer can afford to advertise on all 4 of the sites, so you may find a car on Auto Trader that's not on Car Gurus, and vice versa. So I think it's good to check everything that's out there if you're serious about shopping.
That's pretty interesting. So like once you figure out like one vehicle or a set of vehicles, you could essentially take the VIN and post it into Google and add like Carfax, and it'll bring you to the Carfax website and show you the Carfax. Or
No,
you can't-
not exactly. No, you're gonna have to manually search it out, like 2018
Oh.
Model 3 within 50 miles of me. And then you'll have to see if it pops up on that search criteria. But once it does, again, you click into it and you scroll down. There's a lot of good data in the bottom of those VDPs, the vehicle description pages. Again, that the websites are providing their insights on the vehicle. Car Gurus is one of the best because they give you how many days it's been on the market, any price drops within the last 30 days. They give their pricing analysis against the market. How is this car priced against all the other competitors? And then they give the auto check report and an analysis of the auto check. So if it's a rental car or if it's got structural damage, they pull that data off and actually post it into the bottom. So I think they do a really good job on Car Gurus with kind of analyzing it. Now, as a seller, some of that information is not always accurate. So sometimes it can paint a bad picture of the car if the reports don't have everything on there. So, but it's still good for the consumer. As a shopper, someone who's in the market for a car, I think it's good data to have for the shopper.
So once someone has like the Carfax, like what are some things they need to like look out for? I remember you told me in the past, like, of course, if it's a rental vehicle, that's one thing to be, keep in mind because it's been driven, of course, differently. But then also like where that vehicle came from could be a big difference on the battery. Like hot states like California, maybe the battery's being stressed more. What are some things to look out for on the Carfax?
Yeah, well, with Teslas, we have a philosophy where we don't source our cars from Arizona, New Mexico, or Nevada due to heat soak. And that's just from my experience in the automotive industry. It's hard to keep even a regular 12-volt car battery in those cars for a couple of years, let alone a high voltage battery over a 10 or 15-year period. And we've been seeing a lot of failure rates in batteries coming out of those three states too. So there's some data there that suggests that maybe it's not the best environment for these cars. So we just strictly stay away from it. That's a determination you can make on your own as a buyer, but I'm just sharing with you that we don't do the California cars, or we try to limit our California car purchases because of the supercharging habits out there. And again, higher failure rates, supercharging is not that great for the car. So that's just us. Now, every customer is going to have their own criteria. Some people don't like buying cars from the up north, the Northeast, because of rust. Now, that car could have been garage kept its whole life, but some people are going to disqualify a New York, a New Jersey, a Connecticut car right off the bat. And the Carfax is going to tell you the state of origin for that vehicle. That first page of the Carfax, and I think that's what you were referring to, is the most important part. It's going to tell you any accidents. Is there any open recalls on it? What's the title status? Clean title, or is there structural damage or an airbag deployment? So that first page is very important. And the same with the auto check. Auto check does it on the first page. And for those of you that don't know, auto check is the competitor to Carfax. It's kind of like the commercial Carfax. It's not as fluffed up with a animated character on there. It's more data driven. And they're really tapped into the auction side of things. So we can see how many times it's gone through auction on an auto check. And they have some of their own announcements and things that they put on their report that Carfax doesn't. So that's why I was saying it's imperative to check both of them, because there might be an accident on one report and not on the other.
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of accidents, like I've started to see more Carfaxes that have like minor accident. Is that like, would you completely steer away from anything bad on like anything regarding accident or minor accident, or is that okay? Because I feel like just more body shops. I even saw like a Carfax that had like a detail reported on like a car wash on the Carfax. So I guess they're just trying to get as much data as possible to then put it to the buyers or the people that are receiving that data. But like, would you stay away from a minor accident Carfax?
No, minor doesn't scare me. Moderate and severe do, and I stay away from frame damage. But here's the thing that most people don't know is that you can get a Carfax report changed. You can. There's companies out there that will come and physically inspect the car, like if it's a moderate or severe damage, or just report it as an accident. They'll come out and inspect the car and actually have the ability to downgrade the car from a moderate accident to a minor. So I take all of that with a grain of salt. It's really hard to tell because I know the reports can be changed by dealers who know what they're doing. But if you're buying from an original owner, and they tell you, hey, just the bumper's been painted, it's just bumped in the back, then that's usually a good indication that the report's accurate. And I would not scare away from that car. And plus, I know too that even if damage on a Tesla is a little bit more than minor, there's a good chance they're going to total it out and it would never even get fixed. So usually when a Tesla says minor, it usually was pretty minor, because it was anything of any significant value. We know the insurance companies just total the things out because they don't want to deal with it.
I see. Yeah. No, that makes sense. But going to like the accident part again, like I feel like there's ways, because when we both were around cars a lot, like there's ways to kind of check to see, like using like a paint meter, right? To like check the paint to see like if it's been repainted. But I guess that's really tough because a lot of Teslas from the factory might be repainted as well. I guess my question is like, if you see a Carfax that's clean and you go to see that actual Tesla on the lot, could you take a paint meter and go through every single panel to identify whether it's been an accident, and like what could you conclude from some of that?
Yes, you could take a paint meter, and even though Tesla has some variation in the paint, it will still be consistent all the way around the car. Anytime you repaint a panel on the car, when you take a paint meter to it, it reads way off the charts, unless it was done by like a really, really, really good high-end body shop. But no one's taking their Tesla to those type of places. You'll run your hand down the edge of panels, and you can kind of feel if it's rough, because you can never reproduce that factory coat. But it's hard. Paint meters are expensive. And then once you figure out if it's been painted, then what? What are you going to do? You got to really dig into it to try to figure out, was it painted for a scratch or was there actual damage? And the average consumer is going to be way over their head when getting into that kind of stuff. Paint, it's kind of like a catch-22. I tell my customers, it's like, yes, there's a scratch on the door and you can see the scratch and we can buff it and make it look less. Some people want it painted, but now you have this painted panel that down the road, someone could say, hey, oh, this could have been in an accident. And you're like, no, no, it was a scratch. But no one believes that.
Yeah,
When you're going to sell it, they're like, of course it was a scratch. I don't know. The paint thing's difficult. I think avoiding a car that's been in a major accident is more important than, trying to figure out if the door or the bumper has been painted. If it doesn't match, obviously that's a cosmetic thing. But I think the average person looking for paint work is just over their head, just looking for a way to devalue the car to get a discount.
that makes
Um,
sense. Like
you
using it
know,
as like a negotiating tool to get a couple $1,000s more when they
yeah,
really
this
don't care.
right. At the end of the day, it looks fine. It's not a big deal. It's painted for a scratch. You don't want the car with the scratch. So what do you want?
Exactly. So now moving to battery health. I feel like a lot of people in that second step, once they've found those three vehicles and they go to the dealer lot, like what are some tips? Because I've always kind of felt like, battery health is an issue and you could jump into the vehicle, hit the range button and see like what type of range at the percentage and try and calculate it. But at the same time, like Tesla has a pretty long warranty, like 8 years, 120,000 miles or 100,000 miles. And so I guess it's a big issue if you're buying like a Model 3 that has over 100,000 miles, but if you're under, you still have some time to like make some claims if it's under like that 30% drop in degradation of the battery, right? But I guess what are some tips
Mhm.
on battery health and checking it before you get there?
First and foremost, like you mentioned, just calculating how many miles you'll get at 100% state of charge and just comparing that to the original rating of the car. And the car does not have to be fully charged to figure out, what it is. You just divide the mileage by the percentage and times it by 10 and you'll have the full mileage of the car. So people like to do that. The other thing we use is a recurrent report, and that's an algorithmic based health of the battery based on the mileage on the car and where the car came from. And then we also use a report called Verse New, where we can physically plug into the CAN bus system of the car, download the data, and this company will generate a battery health report as far as the score goes. Now, you're referring, I think, to the actual degradation test that's built into the service menu of the Model 3 and the Model Y. And a lot of people ask me, hey, what's that? And what a lot of people don't realize is that test takes 24 hours. You have to plug the car into the wall. You have to let it decharge the battery all the way, fully charge the battery all the way. And then I think it decharges it down the halfway or something like that. And it takes a long time. And then it's going to give you the score. I've never seen a score below 70%. And imagine that that's the warranty cutoff.
Yeah.
So I take that test again with a grain of salt.
So
It's Tesla providing their own reporting to protect their own warranty claim system, and you can use third party apps that will test the battery much lower. Tessie's one of them, Verse New. So it's good to have a multitude of it. But at the end of the day, right, there's no malfunction in the battery. And you have it reporting at, let's just say, 80%. Okay, now what? Right? Are you just not going to buy the car? How do you know that everyone doesn't test at 80%, right? How do you know that all of them don't test at 75% and yours is actually a good one? So having the right data set to compare it to is imperative. And the problem is that data set does not exist. So I ask
interesting.
people, you want me to test the car? That's no problem. And I'll give you the number. But what's the number you're looking for? What is the number that is
Mm,
considered good? And what's the number that's considered bad? And most of the time I'll get the answer is, well, I don't know. I'll know once I see the number.
right.
No, 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 it doesn't work that way. Like, so I'll go, "It's 95." And I'll be like, "Well, is that good or bad?" I don't know. I don't know. I mean, a 95 typically would be good, but if everything else tests at 99, it could be
Exactly.
bad. So
Right.
without having the data, and Tesla's not giving it to us, the internet, it's not out there. No one's compiled it. So it's just one of those things that kind of really creates a tension point with customers because they want the test, but I know once they get the number, they're going
They
to
have
say
no
it's low.
idea.
It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what the number is. The first reaction is, "Ooh, that's low."
Yeah.
It could be 93. "Ooh, that's low."
Right.
Is it? You want it to be 100? And so that's one of the sticking points for sure. That drives me up a wall a little bit, honestly, because we provide the Verse New report, which actually plugs into the car. We provide the current report. We provide the 100% miles at state of charge. So we try to give everything up front to not have to run that 24-hour test because it takes forever.
Yeah.
I don't want to tie up my charger for that long.
Yeah, 'cause you
Um,
can you cancel the 24-hour test? 'Cause I saw actually they moved that so that anybody can do that test from, like, the regular menu, but once you start it, 'cause I didn't realize it was like a 15 to 24-hour test, like, once you start it, can you cancel and opt out, or you're pretty much
oof. I
That's
don't
it.
know. I've never had to try to cancel one, but you
Yeah.
might be locked in. I don't think you'd want to cancel it once you started.
Yeah, that's true, and 24 hours is, like depending on when you do that, like, that card's a dud, essentially, you can't do anything with it, so it's not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
and we're selling cars so quickly to tie one up, and then again, you already know how the client's gonna react once they get that information. Because we tried it at the very beginning, I was very, "Yeah, let's do it," and then every reaction was, "Oh, that's low," and it's like, "But it's not.
yeah,
It's not low," and it
exactly.
just so
So going to because Recurrent, I know that company exists, but only dealers can access that, right? Like, as a consumer, you can't just take a VIN and just throw it into that website and see what happens, right? Only dealers can access that, and then the other one, it's a physical device, you have to plug it in, which I imagine that device is pretty expensive.
yeah, we pay $300 a month for it,
Wow.
so it's yeah, you're disconnecting the CAN bus on the back of the console. You're putting in a jumper harness, then we're plugging in an ODP Bluetooth module that connects with an app that we have, and the app downloads everything out of it. And I'll send you some of the reports. We'll share with it. They're a relatively new company. The reports are pretty good. They'll give you the battery balance, the health of the battery, a lot of other stats. It's like a 3-page report with the real data out of the car, and they do just about every brand too.
So, I guess wasn't Recurrent at one point it was kinda like a Carfax, the consumer could just put any VIN in there and pay for it, but then I guess why'd they
They got
switch?
too big. Yeah, they were offering it to consumers. You take pictures of your dash, with the mileage, and then it would calculate the report, and then they would send you monthly updates on the health of your battery as you were driving, but they pulled that back and they focused completely on the dealer side and supporting the dealers now.
Interesting. So is there another resource where someone could just take a VIN off of CarMax or Carfax and just put it in there and it would give that, but I guess you could just do the math yourself because every dealer, if they're selling a Tesla, they're usually showing the range and the percentage point at this point, or at least you can ask for it and they'll.
Mhm.
So you were saying like that's pretty much good enough to figure out range and maybe battery health
Yeah, it's just
ish.
like it's a third party looking at the car who's not selling it, giving you their opinion of the health of it, just like Carfax. And that's what I related to. Carfax isn't 100% accurate, but it's good information, just like Recurrent. It's not 100% accurate, but it's good information. It kind of gives you an idea of the car. Could it be a dud or is it something, based on what they've seen, a good vehicle? So just something to hand somebody. Someone else has looked at this, just kind of giving it their stamp of approval.
Love it. So the next step usually is people go see the vehicle. They drive it, and typically I would say, make sure it goes straight, make sure there's no vibrations, make sure you don't. I mean, the problem is it's a Tesla, right? And so you're going to have a lot of rattling no matter what. It's just that just comes with the territory. I mean, any old vehicle is going to have rattling, so that's certainly how it is. But any tips or like checking the tires, make sure that's good. But I mean, you could just swap those out relatively cheaply as well. But I guess, like, do you listen for clunks or other
Oh
types of
yeah.
noise within suspension?
I got my 10 points here. I'm going to go over. I'm going to kind of rapid fire them to you all. But the first thing I do, check service menu, just a regular service menu, and see if there's any notifications in there. That's going to tell you if the coolant's low or if there's any malfunctions with the autopilot system. These are like front facing consumer issues. If there's no notifications in that menu, then I put the car into service mode. There's a lot of videos out there on how to do that, and I'm going to check to see if there's any notifications on the backside. A notification in a Tesla is basically like a check engine light or an ABS light. All of them are hidden in a back screen, so they're not right in your face if there's something minor going on. So I'm going to go back in that screen. I'm going to see if there's any faults back there that need to be addressed. The next step I do is exactly what we talked about before. I'm going to calculate what the 100% state of charge is on the battery. So I'm going to look at how many miles are on the battery and then the percentage, and then I'm going to times it by 10 to give me that 100% state of charge. I'm going to walk around the car. I'm going to check the condition of the tires, and then I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to turn the steering wheel to the left and to the right with my foot off the brake. And what I'm going to be listening for on the Model 3 and the Model Y is creaking in the suspension. Once they get up to 60, 70,000 miles, they start wearing out the upper control arms really bad. And with your foot off the brake, you can hear it. It's like a groan. So that's a sign that there could be some issues going on in the front suspension. Not expensive, but definitely something that would need to be addressed and you'd want to have addressed if you were just buying the car.
All right, Chip, but really, if you're buying a used Tesla, why wouldn't you want to check the health of it first? I mean,
mean, you can literally do that for free right now, zero excuse. And that's where Amber comes in, the official partner of this podcast. Amber is legit. They help EV owners dodge those surprise repair bills by offering extended protection made specifically for electric vehicles. We're talking your battery, your drive unit, and all those other different components that you don't even think about until something goes wrong. But the cool part, they're offering free remote inspection of your Tesla right now, like full system diagnostics, powered by the same tools Tesla service centers use, but without the dealership. And yeah, I said free. So if you're looking to buy a used Tesla, or if you already have one and you want to just sleep better at night, this is a no-brainer. It's remote, it's fast, it's free, and it could literally save you thousands. So go hit the link in the description of this podcast, get your free checkup, and also learn about Amber's protection plans as well. For fun, I just ran all of my Tesla vehicles just to make sure I have some extra peace of mind. So let's keep EVs on the road longer, and now let's get back to the show.
The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put the car in drive and reverse and kind of do little lurches forward and back. I want to check the motor mounts. We've been seeing a lot of drive unit mounts going bad on the rear wheel drive cars. I guess just all the torque is wearing the mounts out, and it's an expensive repair if you have to replace those motor mounts. So that's one of the things that I'm checking for right off the rip, because we're seeing it a lot now on the older cars.
How expensive is that repair?
If you go to Tesla, it's $2,800. We charge $1,400 because it does require removal of the rear subframe and removing the drive unit from the subframe to press in the new motor mounts. And it's just one of those things we're starting to see more frequently on the rear wheel drive models. The all-wheel drive, I guess, is spreading the torque across the chassis, and so we're not seeing them wear out on those cars.
I see.
The other thing you kind of touched on is I'm going to go on the highway and I'm going to check for any vibrations, bent wheels, tire condition. A lot of these 19s, especially if these cars came from the Northeast, have bent wheels on them. It's just inherent. The potholes in the roads are so bad and they vibrate. Every Tesla should run smooth down the highway, like dead smooth, as long as the highway is good pavement. But we see a lot of bent wheels. We do a lot of replacement of wheels and tires. And then the last thing, well, not the last thing, but next to the last thing is the glass. There's so much glass on the car. Make sure you're inspecting that top sunroof glass and even the back glass for any chips or cracks in it. Too many times, we see the windshield's good and I never looked up and I end up with a cracked sunroof. And that is very common on these cars. Well, it's not overly common, but it's something worth looking for, because if something falls on the roof, if it was steel, it'll just kind of bounce off and leave a dent. In these cars, it can crack the glass, and replacing the top glass right now is about $1,000 last time I
Ooh.
checked, and I think the back one's a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Um,
Going to the brakes, because I've always heard like Tesla brakes like last forever, or they can last a really long time because of regenerative braking. And I want to say, like, I used to tell people that the stock brakes on Model 3, like the pads, can go like 150,000 miles. But I did want to ask you, like, what's the most you've seen? And like, is it like the brakes are fine, but then the rotors need to be replaced? Like, what's like a usual life cycle of that section of the vehicle?
we have done more brakes for corrosion than we do for actually wearing out the pads.
Okay.
So the pads should last about 150,000 miles, honestly, with regular brake use, because you're regenning most of the time. But what we're finding is if you uh, have your regen on standard and you don't use the brakes a lot, you can get corrosion on the rotor. So rust will start to build up after like a day. We just had rain for like 5 days here in Tennessee, and you got to go hit the brakes real hard to kind of dust them off, get the little bit of rust accumulation off of them. But if you don't, that rust can build, it can swell the rotor, and then you'll have like a grinding noise in the pads. And that's actually one of the things on my checklist here, is to check the condition of the rotors. You don't really want one that has some rusty rotors on it, because that means the car has not, it's been sitting, as far as like the previous owner has not been burnishing the brakes as necessary to keep the rust accumulation coming off. So checking for brakes is a big deal, but they should last a long time as long as you keep them in good condition.
So actually, that's an interesting. So as an owner, would you say try and use your brakes once a week?
Yeah, yes. I have to go drive every car on my lot after a couple days of rain and just kind of kick the brakes real hard to kind of burn the whatever sediment off of it. Because when it's sitting there and it's raining, water's splashing up on that bare metal, and it gets little rust spots. And if you let it sit for 2 or 3 weeks, it can really get really bad, and you can feel it in the pedal. So yes, driving your car, hitting the brakes real hard, maybe once or twice a week, just to clean the rotors off, is good health for the car. Just like a gas car, you should floor your gas car every once or twice a week just to clean out the engine and get that carbon burning off. So it's the same thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. But so if someone were to do that, like, so brakes can last 150,000 miles. What about rotors? About the same 150,000 miles as
Yeah,
well?
they should last. The brakes, the pads, and the rotor should last the same, the 150,000 miles, as long as you're dusting them off every once in a while, and you're not in a high salt environment. Some people can't avoid it. Ohio, Pennsylvania, the Northeast, they're gonna have to replace their rotors probably at 100,000 miles just due to the corrosion on there because it's going to be a drivability issue. You're going to hit the brakes, they're going to vibrate real bad,
Ah,
or you're going to hear that noise as you're driving down the road or in a drive-through or something.
gotcha. And so recently I've been driving like the Model 3 Performance, and I guess it was like sitting for too long or whatever, but I started hearing like the really loud squeaking noise. And I remember hearing that like on the previous BMW cars, and I thought that was like normal, but I'm not sure. Is that normal on like the newer vehicles, or
The
what's going
brakes
on?
are getting so big on modern cars, they're massive. 10 years ago, the brakes weren't this big, and it's just the noises that you're gonna hear out of them. But same thing, the car's been sitting, you need to really get on the brakes hard, kinda cook them off, get them up to temperature, and then the squeak will go away. In the service menu, there's something called brake burnishing, it's in all the
Mhm.
Teslas, and it allows you to turn regen all the way down and basically heat the brakes up properly. And the reason they included that function in there is because exactly what I'm talking about, because of the corrosion that will get on there, or if a car sits on their dealer lot even for 2 or 3 weeks without being driven, you can perform this procedure, clean them up, and then everything should be good.
Yeah, that makes sense. So now moving to like the interior, there's a bunch of mini electronics like seat controls, like of course the screen, the cameras. Like, what are some like tips from you've seen like that could go wrong or that has high failure rate that people should definitely check within the interior of the vehicle?
Yeah, the seat switches are one of them. They break all the time. They're just cheap plastic. So just make sure all those are intact. But one of the things I've been seeing more frequently is the Bluetooth system. I would sync your phone up to the Bluetooth system in the car, just, on the test drive, and see if it will go. I've had some situations where the Bluetooth antenna has been damaged and you can't get the phone to sync to it. And you won't know that until after you buy the car, and you try to sync your phone up. The antenna's in the driver's side mirror, and sometimes people will hit that mirror on something and they'll damage the antenna. Then their keyless entry doesn't work, the phone doesn't work inside. So that's something that I check every single time because that mirror can be expensive. And then you want to also go into the software screen, and click on, see what hardware's in the car, what software is hard loaded on the car. Make sure if they're claiming it has full self driving, that it's actually there, listed as included package and not expires on. And then clicking on that additional vehicle options will also give you some insight on whether it has CCS charging or home link installed, some extra accessories that the customer may have put on. So it's just making sure you know what you're buying and clicking on the right things in there because the car will tell you everything.
Yeah. And so I see on the forums a lot, and people ask me all the time, like, do I get the Intel chip or the AMD chip? Like, is there actually a difference between that and like the UI, or is like what should people be aware about?
I don't even know which is the good one now. It flip-flops.
Right.
The AMD was the original one, then it went to Intel with the MCU2, so everybody said the Intel was the one to get. Then it went back to the AMD,
Yeah.
and then it was Intel, and now it's back to AMD. So honestly, I don't know which one's better. The newer cars run faster, like just the screen is a little bit more responsive. But unless you're in like a 23 to a 19 to like a 2013, you won't really feel the speed difference unless you try it back to back. I think
Right.
Tesla's interface is excellent compared to a lot of the manufacturers out there. So I think moving from any brand to Tesla, you're going to see an increase in performance. But in between the Teslas, it's minute, in my opinion. Someone who's
Yeah.
in them all every single day, you're not gonna notice a huge difference.
That makes sense. Going back to like the charging, is there any way to tell like if a Tesla has been supercharged like 90% of the time? Like, of course, people will put that in their listings like, oh, I only charge this level 2 100% of the time, only twice I supercharge it. Or like if someone's supercharged it a ton, like they don't put that in the listing, of course. But is there any way to tell on the vehicle?
Unfortunately, there's not. The data's in there. I don't know. No one's been able to access it.
Mm,
So it's I know a lot of the other manufacturers, like Chevrolet specifically, I can go in there and pull the charge history of the car, and it'll tell me whether it was charged on level 1 or level 2, how long it charged for, were there any faults that happened. So I know that it's taking the data. We just don't know how to access it. So there's really no way to tell. Like I said, we use regional stuff. Californians, we try to narrow down to like the city that the car was registered in. Is that a high supercharging area? And then like with the rental cars, if a car's got 60,000 miles on it in 2 years, there's just no possible way that they didn't supercharge. It would the timing thing doesn't add up. So it's just a lot of deducting. But no, there's nothing specifically for us to look at to say yes or no. But you can go into the menu and see the last charge history.
Oh, okay. So you can
Like if
see
they
if it.
supercharged within the past couple months, it'll be there in the charging menu. It'll tell you, last supercharging on. So it's at least a conversation point.
No, that makes sense, because then you can ask them, like, what are their usages and go from there. But in terms of, like, mileage, I know that you at one point were saying, like, too little miles is just as bad as too many miles, I think if that was correct.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
what's like the max cap, like, per year in mileage? Like, if someone's driving 50K miles a year, that's, like, way too much, or, like, what's
hmm
the sweet spot with that?
I think anything over 20,000 miles a year is considered high mileage. I think anything below 10,000 miles per year should be considered low mileage. Because the average person is driving about 15,000. So if you drive 30% less, you would be considered low mileage. And if you drive 30% more, you would be considered high mileage. So, a 3-year-old car with 45,000 miles on it, I don't think is out of the question. Some people shy away from that. They want lower, but, it's all budget, how much you want to spend. Spend more, get lower mileage. But, I would not buy a car that has 100,000 miles in 2 years. That seems excessive.
Yeah, that makes sense. Unless it was, well, even if it was, like, under 10 grand or 5 grand, still probably too much because 'cause you're just buying something with ton of issues later on the line.
Yeah, you're paying for it one way or another.
Yeah, that makes sense. Perfect. So now we'll get into the pro tip of the week. My pro tip, I'll go first. Well, before we get into that, any final tips on buying a used Tesla that you had?
I do. The market right it is still fierce and competitive. There's still a lot of people in buying Teslas, and there's a lot of people who want to have independent inspections done. And like we said earlier, if you're buying from an independent person, like a person to person or a smaller dealer, I would definitely recommend having a pre-purchase inspection done by somebody else. If you're buying from a big dealer, it could be tough to allow them to take the inventory and have it inspected elsewhere because there is a lot of competition. But seek out, specialty dealerships like myself that specialize in EVs. There's a lot of us all over the country. It can take a lot of the guesswork out of buying one of these cars since we do all the research up front for you. And then also, going to even a big store that has a lot of volume, they can take in cars, local cars from trade customers. So you can sometimes find a really, really good local car there at a good price because they just want to get in and out of it. So just picking the place to do business with is probably more important than the car that you buy sometimes. I'll put that out there.
Yeah, and actually, like, when people ask me all the time, like, where should they buy their used Tesla or even sell their used Tesla? And of course, I say CarMax, Carvana, but then I also say, like, look up your local mom and pop dealers in your area and look more specifically, look up their like Yelp reviews, Google reviews, and if they don't have a lot of complaints, give them a shot as well because they like that's their bread and butter. They deal with this day in and day out, and so it's a good recommendation, I would say.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So now we'll get into the pro tip of the week. I'll go first. My pro tip is that Tesla does price drops. We know they do price drops on the new side, but they also do price drops on the used side as well, like used prices on their Tesla vehicles that they sell. And so the reason why it kind of seems like there's no Teslas under 25K from Tesla directly is because once it drops under 25K, people are scooping that up super quickly. And so there's websites that we have that you can track prices of those vehicles. Maybe it's worth signing up for them, especially if you find vehicles that you like, so you can be notified immediately when that price drops on the used side. And so that's my pro tip of the week.
All right, my pro tip of the week is I'm going to provide some insider knowledge on the service department. So I've run big dealer groups, I've worked for them, and I've been very in tune with service departments and how they do their labor pricing. So I'm going to let you know of some new trends that are taking place in service departments with the labor rate pricing. All right, so we all know that every shop has their posted rate, which is $147 an hour. But did you know that some dealer groups are now charging you based on how many hours you book? So, for example, that first hour is $147. But if you buy 2 hours, it's now $156 per hour. If you buy 3 hours, it's now 166 per hour. If you buy 4 hours, it's 178, and it ramps up until you get to 9 or 10 hours where it actually starts going back down and you get a slight discount to below it. And this is called service labor matrix pricing. It was created in the highest levels of the offices of these Fortune 300s as a way to find the sweet spot. They've determined, hear me out, the average RO is 3.5 hours. So they
Okay.
made sure that the labor rate was at the maximum $178 an hour at that 3 to 4 hour window. I'd have to show it in writing, but what I'm explaining is the more hours you buy at a service department run by a Fortune 300, I'm not going to name them by names, you will pay more per hour. So look at your repair order bill. Look at if they billed you for 3 hours, take that against their posted labor rate, and you will notice that it is more than their posted rate. And they're hoping no one catches it. So I'm calling them out.
Oh,
So pay
wow.
attention to what you're doing. Now I'm going to add another caveat. They do it with parts pricing too. So it's another thing called a parts pricing matrix. And what they do is they put a higher margin on the lower price parts over MSRP.
Wow.
So you could go into a service department of a Chevy dealership and you need to have your EGR valve replaced. And that EGR valve MSRP on Chevy's website is 150. They could have it marked up to 165 because they're marking up $150 parts and an additional 8%. Now on the higher parts like engines and stuff, they're only marking them up maybe 2 or 3% over MSRP and hope you don't see it. But on the lower parts like bolts and gaskets, they're marking up like 3 and 400%. So a bolt that might cost me 55 cents is costing $2. And they're putting it right onto the repair orders right in front of the customers because they know you're not going to go part by part and check it against the manufacturer's website for MSRP. So a lot of people are falling victim to paying over MSRP at the dealership for OEM parts. It is
Wow.
brutal. And like I said, the major publics have implemented these type of pricing structures for their labor rates and for their parts pricing. In my opinion, it's criminal. It is absolutely criminal to charge over MSRP when you're a franchise dealer. But
Yeah.
again, they're able to charge whatever people are willing to pay, and if the customer is not checking against MSRP about what that part is, you're gonna get taken advantage of. So
I
just
mean,
double check it.
like, going for the parts thing, it's not like if you catch them I mean, yes, you could call them out, but they also kinda know maybe the consumer's not gonna go to they've already invested so much time, essentially, they're not gonna go to
They're
the
not gonna
next
fight it, right? But if you go
yeah.
to a parts manager of one of these publics, they don't want the heat, we know that.
Ah, I
So,
see.
"Hey, you're charging me 4 times MSRP for this bolt, I'm not paying that." I guarantee they adjust it. And if they don't
Interesting.
adjust it, you know exactly the type of business you're dealing with and take your
Yep.
business elsewhere.
Yeah.
You have to be aware, stop giving these big corporations this insane money when they're screwing you right to your face. And I'm just here just telling you they're doing it. I don't wanna be the bad guy. I'm not the one who came up with this plan. I know the people who did, but they've implemented it company-wide in these Fortune 300s, you know, the big groups, and they're all doing it because it's all focused on profit, and, if you dig down deeper, you'll see it, and it's unfortunate, but I figured I'd bring that up. That's my hot take. Check your repair bills. Most likely, you're paying over door rate for multi-hour jobs, and you're paying over MSRP for your parts.
That's crazy because you would think, like, when if you're going to service and you're paying for the hours, it would get cheaper as you do a bigger project, but that 3 hours, it gets more expensive. I guess that's just a way to, like because they have to post the first hour rate. Now I'm gonna go take a look at it because that's crazy to see that it can go higher, like, that much more higher for that 3 to 4 hour job.
I have printouts, I can't show them, but I have printouts that show the matrix, and when this was first handed to me and rolled out this was rolled out about 7, 8 years ago, believe it or not, and it's you know, I was blown away. I was like, "No one's gonna pay this." I was like,
Yeah.
"Only" you know, and then sure enough, I mean, it was what really drove profit sales in service departments, and if you look at the public groups that are really having an uptick in their service, it's not because more people are going in, it's because they're just taking more advantage of those customers that they have, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's not good.
I'm
So they're
calling you
basically just
out. I'm calling you out. Tell me I'm wrong.
they're increasing
I'll post the sheet.
yeah. I wonder it does because I know Tesla has, like, pretty high labor rates. I wanna say it's, like, 250 an hour, at least here in
At least out in
California.
there, yeah. It's
Um,
140 here out in
okay.
Tennessee.
Do you know if they do the same as well?
No,
Like,
no, they
that
don't.
so just
They're
straight
they're they're straight they're straight time. And
y
Tesla, I think, is very fair with their pricing. As I check parts pricing against their website, and they only charge MSRP,
yep.
and they charge their labor rate straight up.
And actually, what I found out recently is like if you have Tesla insurance, you can get 50% off like parts. And the example that was shown to me was that it was a windshield replacement. They had Tesla insurance. I guess for whatever reason, maybe it wasn't covered, and or maybe it was covered. I don't know. But on the itemized breakdown, the windshield was 50% off just for the part. And I was like, oh wow, that's pretty
Oh, that's
interesting.
cool. I did
Yeah.
not know that. We don't have Tesla insurance here in Tennessee, so I haven't had too much experience with that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, so the next section is our EV owner sound off. So if you've got a question, there's a form down below. You can fill that out. Also, we'll scan through comments on the video and the Spotify to see if you have any questions there, so we can throw it into and we'll answer it on the podcast. But now we'll get into the discharge or our hot takes for the current market for Tesla or electric vehicles. And I would say my hot take right now is the Cybertruck. It's getting a lot of polarizing views still, and it seems like it's maybe hit its limit for the market. But it actually is a very cool car. We have one, of course, so maybe we're a little bit biased, but I really would like to push people to try and go drive one because the steer-by-wire, the steering technology makes it feel a lot different. And people, they just look at it, they don't like the look of it, and they don't actually drive it or give it a chance. And I feel like that's unfair a little bit to the Tesla Cybertruck. But maybe once prices drop for it even more, depreciation is hitting it like crazy right now. And I imagine there's going to be a cheaper Cybertruck rear-wheel drive this year. And hopefully that's like in the 50K price point, and that would get a lot more people into it. And so that's kind of like my hot take for today. But Chip?
All right, my hot take is sales tax. Why do buyers love to forget about sales tax when negotiating a car deal? Everything you buy today has sales tax except gas and Waffle House. They're the only two that have sales tax built in. I guess it's a negotiation tactic, right? Just play dumb. Yeah, give me the car. It's listed at 8 grand. I'll buy it for 7 grand out the door. And it's frustrating because it's like, well, I don't have the 1,000 to give you in the discount, let alone the additional 1,500 to cover your taxes and fees. And people act so surprised that sales tax exists. And I just trying to understand where that comes from, like what markets you're shopping in, where everything's tax free, where you walk in and the price is exactly the price listed. I grew up in the United States. Nothing is ever the price that it says it is. When I go to McDonald's, it says it's $4.99. It comes out to be
Yeah.
$5.25. When I go to buy a car and it says it's 30 grand, I know it's going to be 32 or 33 out the door. And that's where we need to start negotiating it. So that's just my gripe is that we get amnesia when negotiating a car deal and it comes to sales tax. So I just want to remind everybody that yes, all cars in most states have some sort of sales tax between 3 and 10% that will be additional onto the sales price that you need to take into consideration when shopping for a used or new vehicle. So I just want to give everybody a reminder of that.
Yeah. What is the sales tax in Tennessee for
Ooh,
buying?
it's 7% and then another
Ooh.
2% on like the first. So it's like 9.2%
Oh,
total.
wow. That's actually that's almost as bad. California is 10.25, but it just got raised to 10.5 in a lot of different cities and counties, but it can be as low as 7.75, which is the state minimum. But I guess going to that tip, I want to say like, is it Nevada or Arizona where people don't pay sales tax on used car purchases? It's one of those states. But
Oh, it might be. I think New Mexico is one of them. Like South Carolina has a $500 flat tax, but then you pay personal property tax every year. So while the
I
sales
see.
tax isn't high, they get you, for $1,000 every year after that.
And
Yeah,
then
I,
there's
I
also the notorious Montana, right, where if you have a business there, you could also buy
avoided
vehicles.
there.
Yep,
Yep.
yep. But I wonder if Montana has like a property tax with that.
No,
But
they
no.
don't. They're
Wow.
completely tax free. See, here in Tennessee, we have no state income tax, so they get it back on the sales tax side. So while you have a little bit less taken out of your paycheck, if you're like a W-2 employee, you get it when you spend. So if you're a saver here in Tennessee, it's good for you. But if you're a spender, it costs you more.
I see. That makes sense. So it balances out at the end of the day. Perfect. Well, thank you all for watching. Definitely hit that subscribe, that like button, and we'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.
Yeah, thank you guys.